Hey there, everyone. It's me, Samuel Broden, and welcome to a brand new season of Honoring Childhood, the podcast, where we have candid and casual conversations on childhood. I am just so excited about all the amazing guests and conversations we're going to be having this season, and I can't wait for you to join us. So, what are you waiting for? Come on, let's go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the premiere episode of season 3 of Honoring Childhood, the podcast, where we have candid and casual conversations on childhood. So excited to be back for another season. So excited that y'all can actually see me now since we're trying out this whole YouTube recorded podcast thing. We'll see how it goes. Um, but yeah, so now y'all can see me at the same time as we're talking, so super excited about it. And I could not ask for anyone better to be on this premiere episode than not only one of my favorite people in ECE, but probably one of my favorite people in my life in general. Ron Grady is here with us, and I literally am so excited to have a conversation with him, for y'all to just hear us talk and chat about everything he's doing, about all things childhood and anything where our conversation goes. I'm so excited. If y'all don't know Ron, what's wrong with you? You need to know him. Um, he's amazing. He is amazing. He is the author of Honoring the Moment in Young Children's Lives: Observation, Documentation, and Reflection. He's also the author of two children's books: What Does Brown Mean to You, which is out now, and Beatrice Looks for Home, which is out very soon. So, everyone, let's say hi to Ron.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Oh my gosh, it's always so good to be with you, to share space with you, and
Yes.
to chat with you. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I love it. I love it so much. And it's so great too because I feel like we always like have our little phone conversations every few months, and we're always like, I feel like at least like I'm cheesing like the whole time of our conversation, but like whenever I get to like actually see your face in any way and have our conversation, it's just so great. So I'm just so glad that you're here.
Likewise. It's always freaking awesome, and I love seeing all that you continue to do. And I feel like, we've known each other forever.
Yes.
It feels like forever. So it's always fun to like have those lovely human beings in your life, those amazing friends who just, your journeys are always like, I feel like our journeys are always linked, continual growth,
Yes.
continual expansion, and just I'm just proud of you and happy to be here. Okay, I've gushed enough,
Thank you.
but
No, I love it. No, I love it. And I feel like we do that every time we talk, where it's like if we would have just told each other when we first met all those years ago that this is what we would be doing now. But no, it's yes, it's great. It's great. It's awesome. And yes, we could gush about each other all day. But yeah, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself if they are unfortunate enough to not know who you are yet?
totally. Okay, so hi everyone. I am Ron Grady. I feel like I will never not call myself a preschool teacher, an early childhood educator, but I also just love preschool teacher. It's just such a special title to me. I taught preschool for 6 straight years, but worked in early childhood for like have been in early childhood at this point for over 10 years. And I guess the older you get, the more that time grows. So just growing and growing.
Yes.
Worked in research and things like that, and just yeah, love everything early childhood, right? My experiences have been primarily in Reggio inspired and constructivist spaces, also in nature-based education. And I just really care about children, care about kids. I think their worlds and their lives are so important and so fascinating. Love documentation and love writing words about them and for them
Yes.
in ways that, bring people in, I hope. So I'm based in Boston now by way of New Orleans, and I'm a rising fourth year doctoral student at the Harvard Grad School of Education. And that has been a super fun and very interesting ride, especially in these
Yes.
times.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Uh,
Yeah,
I
that's
love
just a little
that.
thing. And yeah, I know. I also, yeah, that's,
That's
that's
you.
the nutshell.
That's
Yeah,
you.
that's me.
That's you. I love
That's
it.
me.
I love it. Um, well, on that, let's talk a little bit about your book, Honoring the Moment in Young Children's Lives. Talk to us
Yeah.
a little bit about who the book is for, what it talks about, how it came to be.
Yeah, totally. Also, let me see. I feel like well, I will grab a copy to show. Like, I can grab it later, but
Oh,
Honoring the
right,
Moment.
we're
Oh
on
my
video.
goodness. I
I
mean,
always
it's,
forget that.
yeah, right, yeah, right, right. I know. Well, it's the new format. I was like, oh, I should have. That's okay.
Yes.
That's okay.
That's all right.
It'll be probably in the show notes or something, I
Yes.
assume.
Yes.
But Honoring the Moment in Young Children's Life. So it is about. I think if I had to like say anything in particular, I consider it like my treat, like a treatise on documentation. Really, I call it my dissertation from my years of preschool teaching. It kind of puts in all of the thoughts that I had around documentation, the wonderings that I had, and presents those in kind of like a way that starts out a little theoretical, but really tries to dig into the practicality of what this looks like and also why, right? I think that, it's interesting that the title is honoring the moment, and your whole brand is honoring childhood, which is a whole interesting thing that, yes, folks, we have talked about and that resonates. And if you know anything about book titles, you also know that there's like a bit of like, let's just say
Yes.
that was it's interesting, but I think in some ways it kind of like reflects our like mutual emphasis, right, on
Hmm.
the value of understanding a child's experience and not jumping ahead to conclusions, right? Doing something that honors their their reality as a human being, right? And so
Hmm.
I think at its core, in the same way that you do that throughout so many of your efforts, I try to do that in honoring the moment, right? Of like basically like what happens if when we document, we're not just looking for things on a checklist or things on a list of standards, but we're actually asking big life questions. And so over the course of the book, I kind of just, again, go through my different years of teaching and bring in examples from those years of teaching, those years of direct classroom experience, and really try to think about, yeah, just the documentation process, right? And
Hmm.
documentation done well, done with intention, can be also a form of advocacy for children and their lived experiences. So that was that's kind of like those are the essential ideas, right? And I think, just in closing, I would probably say I think it's ideally for teachers, for educators, and I think whether or not you work in a setting that is Reggio inspired or nature based, right? That's my experience, but I like to think that some of the principles of the ways that we approach the documentation process can be relevant regardless of where you find yourself.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. I love that. And, I will say, we've talked about this before too, but I feel like throughout all of my years of teaching and everything that I've done with children, I feel like documentation has been something that has not been a forte of mine. And there's been plenty of times where, I've been like, I don't know. It's just, I always felt inadequate in that space, right? I was able to see what the children were doing. I knew what they were learning. I knew where they were developmentally, but I I struggle to find the best way to document that for myself and for the families and for the children, all of those things. I've always kind of had a struggle with that and just feeling comfortable in doing that. And so I'd be curious to know, like, if you were talking to someone who had your book or wanted to know more, kind of was in that space of, I don't know, I just feel like documentation isn't where my strong suits lie. What type of tips or ideas would you give them to kind of push through that or just start that journey?
my gosh, that is such a beautiful, beautiful question, eh? Like, thank you, oh my gosh, for that question and so thoughtfully worded. And I think that there were a couple of things that came to mind to me as you were just saying that, and I wrote them down because I'm like a compulsive note taker. I have a little book here. I'm always
Yes.
documentation, obviously, right? But in response to that, right? Because I feel you, right? Like that is such a thing. And feel like it never goes away. Um, I think audience and curiosity came up for me. And so I think I'll start with curiosity, right? Like I often wonder if when we approach the process of documentation, if we're attuned to our own curiosity, like
Mm-hmm.
what am I curious about, right? Because if we don't have, maybe we don't have a nugget of something that we're like deep, deep curious about. So I would maybe think about that and try to name that because if we don't have that, right, then it's like, okay, well, I'm documenting for this, but then what else do I do, right? What do I do once I've shown that this happens, once I have documented this thing and sent that picture to the parent or the
Mm-hmm.
caregiver or, document this in some sort of way, right? So I would say think about what motivates you, what makes you curious, and maybe it's nothing yet, and that's okay, right? But I think we need to
Mm-hmm.
start that process, right, of wondering about that. And then I would also encourage folks, maybe just this sounds so silly, but hear me out, to start, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
do
yeah.
like just put something up, right? Like
Yeah.
see what happens. And it's not that's not ironclad advice, of course, right? Of course you want to grow, but if this is
Mm-hmm.
somewhere where you're starting and it feels daunting, just do it and say like, huh, like I don't know, take a picture, paste it on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and like, okay, do you like that? Yeah, no, why not? Right? Like start the process of inquiry with yourself to see even so that you can uncover what you think this is and should be and could be. I think the first chapter actually starts in the book, plug, but no, seriously, it's Image of the
Yes.
Educator, right? And it's like,
Mm.
who are we as people approaching this process? And another thing that brings up for me is also audience, right? So you know, throughout, I mean, yeah, gosh, it's so funny. I mean, I think that like, I'm thinking about when I was in pre-K, when I taught pre-K for that like hot 6 month period,
Mm-hmm.
years back, and a lot of the documentation I had was semi-public, right? It was for families and who'd walk through the halls and administrators and things like that. And I think knowing some of our audience can also help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I will tell you that panels were approached with a lot of intention and I strove toward child-centeredness, but the things that they're going to mention and connect to are very, very different than the documentation that I did in the floor book when I worked at the nature school that was primarily for the
Mm.
children, right? And so I think sort of really reflecting like who is this documentation for? Is it a formal context? Is it kind of informal? Is it for children? Is it for families? Is it for caregiving communities? Is it for colleagues?
Mm-hmm.
Um, can sort of start to uncover the processes, right? Because, oh my goodness, like, yeah, I, they vary so much.
Yeah.
And there is no one right way, but there are dispositions, right? Like ways of thinking that can be helpful for us in thinking about what a documentation practice looks like for us. Because, sorry, and this is my soapbox, but I
No, I
guess it is
love it.
my soapbox.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
there are things that we will have to do, and that's fine, right?
Yeah.
The early childhood system likely will it's not going to look it's not going to change quickly enough for us to not ever have to maybe document something that feels a little inauthentic. And I think
Right.
that
Right.
that's the tension, right? We can honor these moments, we can honor the children and the process of childhood, and also sometimes I have to like lead them through you know what I mean? So that
Yeah,
is the
totally.
perpetual tension in early childhood, right? And so I think being honest with ourselves and thinking about what is this actually for, just
Mm-hmm.
starting, right? And maybe I'll and find a friend too, right? Like there's so many spaces. I mean, you have your online community. There's like, you know, I'm sure you have colleagues wherever you might find yourself, listeners, right? Like there's places to go to source information, to just
Mm-hmm.
gather information and to realize that we don't have to have this right away.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
no right or perfect way. And so embrace the process, right? Because we're still learning.
Yes.
Um,
I love
yeah.
that. I love that. And I think that I don't know. I always just try to speak from my own experience, but I feel like a lot of folks also feel this way too. But I always feel like, okay, I have to have this completely perfect. I have to have this the right way all the time. It always has to look like whatever I see as perfection, however I see it, it has to be done this way. And so I think, that idea of like we're all learning, and it's like do what you can do, try what you can try, is so important. And that curiosity that you talked about, I think is so valuable too. Just thinking So, I feel like a lot of times we don't focus on that in our work, right? We don't focus on that when we're with the children, when we're seeing what they're doing. A lot of it is, I don't know, a lot of it is trying to get them to that next spot or trying to offer them exactly what they need. All these things, but if we kind of stop to just take a second and be like, what am I curious about today? What am I seeing them doing that I'm wondering why are they doing it? What are they thinking? What's happening next? Um, Kind of thinking a little bit like they do, right? Their curiosity is on display constantly. And
Right.
I feel like a lot of times, as we get older and as we're into adulthood or as we're into this role of a teacher, a lot of those things that we value about childhood and about children disappear from us, right? Play and all those things, but also that curiosity. And so I like that you said that because sometimes it can't just be as simple as what is it that they're doing that you're curious about and start from there. Because yeah, that I feel like that's always been my struggle of like
Mm-hmm.
I see someone who I know is like, what you see those teachers who they have all the notebooks, like you were just saying, all the notebooks in their little
Oh
apron
my
and they're jotting everything down and they have like everything written. And I mean, I'm not trying to call you out
God.
specifically, but like
I was
that
gonna
is,
say, oh, that is
but
my
that
notebook.
is my but that's like that is my perfect view
Yeah.
of documentation and of observation is the things that I've seen you do in your own practice or I've actually witnessed you do and so a lot of times when you see something like that and you look at something or somebody as like that's how I should be doing it or that's how I want to be doing it, it can kind of uh lead to a little bit of a struggle where you're like, "Oh God,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to do all that, right?" But it is that idea of like just starting it, doing what feels right to you, doing what works for you and learning as you go. I think is great cuz yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of times a lot of us I feel like can be in that kind of perfectionist mind state with so much that we do
Yeah.
that it can
Yeah.
be hard.
Totally. I feel I 100% agree. It's really daunting, right? And it's like it's funny too, right? Because I share this knowing that like my interest in documentation is like it's such it feels like so it's like that doesn't make any sense. On some level, I'm like that doesn't make any sense. Like who spends
Yeah.
this much time on, you know what I mean? I feel like we have our things
Yes.
within the field, right? Like for me, it's like no one spends this much time on this. That's so unreal. It's such an unrealistic amount that I spend on it, right? And so I love that you name that because it's true, right? Like it is like yeah it's true, right? I think the thing that really came up for me too as you said this was like process and just embracing process, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of latent in what you say about curiosity, right? But this idea that it's a process, like
Mm-hmm.
we can try something out, we can try it one day a week, we can try it 1 week a month, we can
Mm-hmm.
try it for 1 hour every other Friday, a few times and see how it
Yes.
feels. Like you don't even have to go all in right away, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
see what feels good for you and try out different formats. Try voice notes, try
Mm-hmm.
some people use an iPad, some people use like an old, an actual dedicated camera to gather photos.
Mm-hmm.
It works for you, right? Because there isn't one one way. I think that's one of like your just like you said, right? One of the beauties of our age, but also the challenges is that we have so much media that shows us like you could be doing this, you could be doing that. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
dang,
Mm-hmm.
all right, well, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Or if I start, like
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good. And so yeah, I think, I loved what you said. Yeah, just embrace the process
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
documentation and like it doesn't have to be, yeah, it gets to be fun. Also, like if it's taking you away from presence with the children, then don't do
Mm-hmm.
it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
wait until you're in a place, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
teaching practices evolve over years and years and years, not over a week or a month or even a school.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but like, yeah.
That is such a huge thing too that I've learned is I don't know, again, my own experience, but I feel like whenever I hear something new or I learn something new or a new way to do something, I'm always like, okay, awesome. Monday, I'm going in there and that's what it's going to be. Or we're changing the whole classroom it's about to be, whatever it is that I learned, it's always like I'm at that space where I want it to be at that apex part of it, or whatever I see as that, like immediately, instead of just kind of embracing that. And it's interesting too, when you were saying process, like I kept thinking like we value so much in what children are doing in the process of how they're doing it, right? That whole process versus product thing.
Mm,
We talk about that all the time. We
yeah,
practice that all the time. But again, when it comes to us, we're so interested in that product, that
yeah.
in game, that we're ignoring that process, or not valuing that process as much as we can. And I don't know, now I'm like thinking so many things, but it's also like a
Mm,
lot of what we do is also teaching the children through what we're doing, even if we're not actually physically
yeah,
teaching them something, right? So if they
yeah.
see us so focused on one part of what perfect is, or any of these things, right? What is that showing them about process? What is that showing them about those things? And so it is interesting once you kind of dive into that idea that we want the best experience for the kids, and so
Mm,
sometimes that can lead to us ignoring that process, or devaluing what that is. um
yeah,
and yeah, it is, and I've tried so many different things too,
yeah.
and
What are your
I feel
favorite?
like I don't know. I
You
really
you on the
okay,
spot now.
so
Sorry.
no. Okay, so I tried. Okay, so the first thing that I was like, I have to make this work, was like, all right, I'm carrying this little tiny little legal notepad in my little pocket, and every time I see them do something that's interesting, I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna write it down and I'm gonna go back to it, right? Okay, well, for me, that worked for like an hour or whatever, right? And so
Yes.
I was like, but I gave it a few tries.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, the best thing that's worked for me is I literally am just taking pictures of what they're
Mm,
doing all day long. Whenever I
mhm,
see them doing something, whenever I see them being interested in something, even if I'm not ever going to use the picture, or even if it really isn't anything that I need to document, I'm just going to
mhm,
take it. And
mm,
then I'm able to kind of sit, and sometimes I would even like I would take a picture and then I would go into like edit it or whatever, and I would just write like
mm,
type
mm,
on the picture, and so for me,
yeah.
that's what I had. It was way more visual representation as opposed to like actual me writing down words.
Yeah.
Um, and so then being able to kind of look through the pictures and see progressions of things, or see, changes in their interest or whatever it is, was
Yeah.
helpful to me. And it's, I don't know, for me it was always something where it was easy to do in the moment. I was used to doing something like that in the moment, right? We're in this kind of technological age of using technology, and so it's something that I'm already grabbing for. I'm already
Mhm,
grabbing for electronic device. I'm already grabbing for my phone, whatever it is. So now I'm using that as a tool to kind of help me through that. And so I think once I was able to, I don't know. I really had to like let go of the idea of what I thought
mm,
was the way to do it, or thought
yeah.
was the way I should be doing it, right? Because when I had the notepad and I had all the post-its and I was trying to do all the notes, I was really, really trying hard to make it work, because I felt like that was what I was supposed to be doing, or that's what I should be doing. Um, and so once I kind of was able to say, okay, I tried that, didn't feel right, didn't really fit in what I was doing. So let me move on from that and try something else. It doesn't mean I'm not going to
Mhm,
do that, or I'm done doing that. But for right now, I'm just going to try something else. So I think once I was able to kind of let go of that, I don't know, that expectation of like
mhm,
what I was
mhm,
supposed to do, and kind of found, or tried a little bit more to find what worked for me in that moment,
mhm.
um, was super helpful. And it might be different next
Yeah.
month, next year, with the next
Um,
group of kids, right? But I think, yeah, just letting go of like those kind of expectations of what we're supposed to do. Because you're right, you know, like you were saying before, sometimes it can really it can take over what we're
Yeah,
doing, and it can take us away from having those present moments with the children, right? Which is where obviously that's where our observation is, right? When we're in those
yeah,
present moments with them, when we're having, you
absolutely.
know, transparent conversations with them, so much can come from that as well. um
Absolutely.
so yeah.
No, I love that, and I wrote down so many words. I think like the last thing you said especially made me think of like proximity, right? Like we are proximate to children, and a term I use in the book. Not that this has to all be about this book, but it's interesting, right? Because I feel like
No,
this is
yes.
like as teachers, we have like a we are uniquely proximate to children,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is part of where that is where we glean our authority from as
Mm-hmm.
educators, right? Like through being with children, close to them, right? And so like we need to be in the we need to hear the conversations, to be there, to be present, right?
Mm-hmm.
All we might not get that conversation verbatim, or we will, but like we can record it right now that we have
Mm-hmm.
access like to other forms of media. But the
Mm-hmm.
most important thing is that relationship, right? That relationship
Mm-hmm.
undergirds everything, because there are going to be 1,000 moments that you could document and
Yeah.
connect. It's like you're with children every day. It's like I just remember, and I'm sure you had similar moments too, right? Where it's like, I'm in the classroom, I'm remembering being at nature school, and the children are running around the thing, doing the thing. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I go to like, get my phone to take a picture, and then the moment's gone. And
Yeah.
I used to be frustrated, but then I was like, there's going to be something awesome again
Totally.
in 20 minutes.
Yes,
But
exactly.
it's
Yes.
all right, right?
Yes.
Like, there's so much happening. And so it's like just be proximate, be with children above all. And like, so I love that. And then I also just wanted to say too about like, I think toolbox is another word I had. And I loved what you said about the sampling of
Mm.
documentation, right? Because it's multimodal, right? People write because like some people are writers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also like, in the old days, like cameras were way less available. So it's like they
Yeah.
weren't just because it was adorable and cute and wow, so nice to read.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that was an efficient tool that they had to do their work, right? And so we have other efficient tools to do our work. They
Mm-hmm.
come with a similar set of constraints and affordances, right? So in the
Mm-hmm.
same way that writing can be slower and it's visual, we can take a lot of pictures. That might mean sometimes you know what I mean? And they have their trade-offs, but like use
Yes.
them. Take
Yes.
those pictures,
Yes.
right? And like, and the last thing I wanted to say on all of that is I think at the crux of whatever you do and however you do this is excuse me, it's time, right, to reflect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like that is key. That is the most important thing. Whether you write, whether you're taking pictures,
Yes.
you need to be able to have, however, whether it's 5 minutes of just, I'm going to take 5 minutes and gather all the pictures of the children working with clay this week and see
Mm-hmm.
what comes. Okay, great. Take all those and put them in some place. And that's where you start. 5 minutes on a Thursday afternoon. You know what I mean? But you have to, same as
Mm-hmm.
you have to start, and you have
Yes.
to give yourself time, because if you don't give yourself time, all those sparks of great ideas and all of the
Mm-hmm.
synthesis that comes, right? The understanding of what does this pattern look like across time, across space, and with time, like, have I seen this in other years of children? Have I seen this,
Yes. Yes.
different? Have I noticed this trend? And so that all requires ongoing reflection at
Mm-hmm.
some sort of planned interval, because let's be real, we're so busy that
Yeah.
like it's not just gonna like happen. And
Mm-hmm.
like it's and I don't want to problematize early childhood. We're not always crazy busy, we're not always
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah.
Are nourishing and fulfilling, and we find ways to rest. And so but also both all of that is true. I think all of those
Yes.
are true.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
we're also,
Yes.
I don't know, at least I was, from my own experience, like you were saying, I remember getting home and being like, woo, what a day, right?
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yes. Yes.
So I just so appreciate all of that, and just the way that you connect in that, because I agree. Plus one to all of it. To all of it.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. Um, all right, well, switching gears a little bit here.
Yeah.
let's talk about your diving into this world of children's books and the beautiful art and stories that you create. I've always been a fan of just your artistic vision and kind of the connections that you create with the art that you make. And so being able to see that come to fruition in these books is great. And so I would love to just hear a little bit about that journey for you and these books that you've created and these stories that are out there.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, thank you for asking. And yeah, I think that, and it's funny, I know I've probably mentioned this before, but just storytelling is such a part of early childhood. Like,
Mm-hmm.
as early childhood, like we're dealing with children's books all the time. It's such
Yes.
a interesting, intriguing medium for me. And I think for all of us, right? Or for many of us at least, right? Like they are, I don't know, I think there's just something about them. I love them. They're like a good children's book, a good story, like it really hits.
Yes.
Like I don't have any
Yes.
fancy words to say
No, I love
about
it. I
it.
love it.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think, I think in my stories and in the books that I have made and worked on at this point, I think each of them I was trying to, and hopefully will still try to, and whatever future projects come up, like tie them to something that feels very grounded in children's lived experiences, at least as I
Mm-hmm.
have seen them up close. I try not to moralize or anything like that. I'm a big fan of the just like let's tell the story, let's celebrate this child's life, and over
Mm-hmm.
time with conversations around this artifact, children will gather the insights that come to them, and also the grown-ups can help to facilitate conversations that are as deep, as shallow, as funny, as serious as they want. And I think
Mm-hmm.
all of them have a place within a single text. Like in my favorite books, sometimes I read them with different lenses on, and so I think
Yeah.
that's important. But yeah, I think what does brown mean to you has been out for a couple of years, which is
Mm-hmm.
really cool. That one was written in response to the murder of George Floyd, and really was a way for me to process like how I might have a conversation with the children who were at that time in my classroom,
Mm-hmm.
um, in a red state, right? Like in
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana, blue city, but a red state, in a
Yeah,
changing
yeah.
steps, we could say, right? For real. And so just like, what does it mean to invite a conversation about that rethreads, or like, I guess, plant seeds of positive association with skin color for Black and brown
Mm-hmm.
children, especially. Obviously growing up as a Black child myself, I remember like people's comments about the color brown and what that meant. And I
Mm-hmm.
was just always like, wait, my whole body's brown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's such a simple thing, this thing, right? And so that book was really like that was my goal with that. And then I wanted to also just have the little boy Benny like do things that kids love to do, like
Yeah,
wake up,
yeah.
dog, help make breakfast,
Yes.
outside, like kind of the essentials of childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whether you grew up on a farm, whether you grew up in the city, just what do children love to do? Children play, children connect, children are members of, communities of care. They dance and move their bodies, right? They, listen to stories, they share ideas. These are all things that they do. And so I just wanted, that book, I really wanted to be a celebration also
Mm-hmm.
of, so much of what is so wonderful about childhood. Uh,
Yes.
and then with Beatrice Looks for Home, which is out so soon.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that one was also, I think in a deeper way, directly influenced by my educational practice and my interest in
Mm.
documentation. And so, you know, without spoiling too much, I mean, I know people online and it's children's, so my primary audience won't be listening to this, but like, she like moves, right? She moves
Yeah.
with her, she has two dads, and she and her dads move from the countryside to the city. It's a book about transitions. It's a book about
Mm-hmm.
making sense of the world when you're in a new space and you feel, disconnected from really your roots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beatrice loves her grandma, and grandma stays behind in the country. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's suddenly without grandma and in this new place, having to, navigate a new world. And, eventually she gets a special package from grandma. Grandma sends her a camera and a notebook and some art supplies, which were my favorite tools to use to make meaning with the
Yes.
children, when I was in the classroom like full time. And so, she basically, yeah, I mean, you'll see all the places that she visits.
Yes, I love that.
It's like, yeah, it's gonna leave a little bit to the imagination. She goes, she makes meaning. And so that Beatrice in so many ways was so special to me because it was an homage in so many ways to the many children who over the years have been willing participants within these processes of meaning making about the world.
Hmm.
And it was also a pleasure to get to do and to create and to have, you know, like, a little girl as the protagonist felt so valuable. And to
Hmm.
have, queer representation,
Hmm.
was also really valuable. And to still have the central through line of the story is another quintessentially childhood experience, right? And I think
Hmm.
that is my hope with all of stories and things, right? It's like childhoods are so varied and diverse and have come in so many different ways, and yet there are common experiences that may wear like a different skin, for example. And by skin I mean, like, whether you're moving from the city to the country to the city, a house down the street, or
Hmm.
you know things like that, right? Eventually, for many of us, there's some sort of transition, there's some sort of experience of newness. And so Beatrice is, an exploration of that and a celebration of the ways that when children are invited in to processes of, into these transitions, into these life transformations, that, um, you know, things can be okay. So,
Yes, I love that. I
yeah.
love that so much. And um, I've sent What Does Brown Mean to You to many people
Oh,
that I know, and to friends of mine who are teachers and directors and admin. And I've also had it for, children who are in my own life, right? I just actually a few weeks ago got it at the library with my nephew who just turned one, and, was able to have him read it. And, that, him being a young black boy, and, having that as something that is going to be part of his life, right? Having these books and these ideas for him at such a young age, I think is great. And I enjoy the book myself. I enjoy children's books myself already. And
yeah.
so I loved reading it, and I'm super excited to meet Beatrice. And I I love that idea of so much of the books is just about childhood, and I
Yeah.
think that that's such uh, a beautiful thing. And, I think that, I don't know, I appreciate your gift of being able to use your artistic talent in a way that feels, um, there's like a connection, I feel like, in what you create when you're looking at it and when you're reading it, that I just think is really special. And so, yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And also the names are just the cutest too, by the way. Like I literally
Thank you.
cannot deal with
Oh
it.
my
I
God.
was like, Beatrice, first of all, I'm just like, that is literally adorable. And I feel like I don't know, for me, whenever I'm like trying to, write a story, or, I'm working on whatever, like, I don't know, thinking of names for characters for me is always difficult, because it's like the first names I think of are always going to be names of people I know, and I don't want to like write a book with a bunch of people's names of like all my friends, right? And so I don't know, I just love that. This is also just a
Childhood
random
books.
question, but is there any meaning behind both? Well, is there any meaning behind the names, period? But then is there any meaning behind them both being bees?
Oh, but great question. No, there isn't, honestly. Nope.
Yeah. I love
I
it.
just
I
love
love it.
I like it's funny. I didn't have a name for Benny, like who is in What Does Brown Mean to You, like until like somewhere through the process, I had just been mentally referring to Benny as the kid. It was a lot longer story. I actually didn't like in my original drafts. I didn't assign a gender to the child because I wanted it
Hmm.
to be just but then I was like, okay, well maybe it's all right for me to do a boy, I guess, in this one. So it just emerged, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how I end up said, it's actually I that's not true. Well, that is true. And also I think my mother-in-law actually suggested Benny.
Oh,
And I was like, huh, that's not bad. All right. And so that's how it worked. So funnily
love it.
enough,
Love
and
it.
then for Beatrice, I for some reason I just knew right away that I wanted her name to be Beatrice. And so
Yes.
it's just like I don't know where that came from either. So who knows? Maybe the trend will continue.
I love it. That's so funny. That's so funny. I love how like sometimes there's like a you're like, I wonder if the and nope, nothing just
I'm like,
happened.
sorry.
I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Um, well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today about everything that you're doing. And I love having conversations with you. I love hearing about everything that you're doing, everything that you think. You always give me something to think about. Um, you always give me something to push for. You always give me like so much encouragement. And I feel like every time we have a conversation, I leave it and I'm like, all right, I'm fired up to do the next thing. I'm fired up to try this. Um, I don't know. I always appreciated that about you. And so I appreciate you coming on and sharing with me and sharing with everyone listening. And, yeah, I'm just super, super grateful, to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like I don't even have any beautiful words. I just, like I said, I love talking with you. Always a pleasure. And just grateful to, have found such a kindred spirit in this work. And thank you for having me. And I know that we'll talk
Yes.
soon. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you or learn more
Yeah,
about you?
sure, absolutely. Yeah, you can find out more about me on my website. I love how I'm saying that like it's a question. It's called
Yeah. Mm,
childology.co. I it's a place where you can kind of keep up with me. It's mainly to get in touch with me and just to kind of see what I've done. I
yeah.
have an Instagram page which you're welcome to follow. I update it pretty inconsistently, but it's there also if you're just wanting to be in the loop or want to get in touch. I think of it like it's like a visual archive. I think of many of my years of teaching, which is really cool. But yeah, just find me on Instagram, send me an email, ron@childology.co if you want to chat. And yeah, that's where I live in the
I love it.
internet these days.
I love it. That's awesome. And yeah, I'll put all the information in the show notes, everywhere you can get the books. Yeah, so thank you again, and thank you for listening and for watching this premiere episode of season 3 of Honoring Childhood, the podcast. And I will see you next week. Bye, everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Honoring Childhood, the podcast. Make sure that you like and subscribe and leave me a comment down below to let me know what you thought about this episode. Make sure that you're also following the podcast wherever you may be listening. Also, be sure to check out my books and follow me over on Instagram at Honoring Childhood.